Hey, Gary McGowan here with the first episode of GTR. That's right, Gary Talks Real Estate, where I share stories about the things that happen with my clients, my personal experiences with owning investment properties, crazy tenant stories, awesome purchase stories, crazy selling stories, all and everything in between. And we're going to talk about, how you can take advantage of any current situation. But really what this is all about is just sharing my personal journey through real estate. I've been a realtor for many years. I've been a real estate investor for many more years. And with all of that I get a tremendous amount of experience. I also got some really cool stories. You know what I'm saying? And I'm part of a leadership group at a brokerage with over 250 agents, and I get all their stories as well. And let me tell you, there's a lot of crazy stuff, but there's a lot of awesome stuff that we can all learn from and have fun while doing it. And that's what this podcast is all about. Got the audio version, we got a video version of it, and I'm going to share one quick story with you, and that's about where you're getting your information from. And then we'll just sign off on the first episode. How's that sound? So getting your information from, and yeah, there's credible news sources out there. There's obviously your trusted advisors, you could say, people in the industry, maybe your neighbor, do I dare say Twitter? Twitter, don't worry, I get my information from Twitter too. TikTok, yeah, there's some social media apps out there that provide some information. But here's the deal. When you have the information and you believe it to be true, life is good, right? Life is good. But sometimes along our journeys, we get information that is incorrect, but we have no idea that it's incorrect, right? And this story goes back to a couple of years ago. The last real estate boom, excuse me, I should have a cough button. The last real estate boom here in the Toronto area back in 2017, I remember one of my neighbors coming up to me, and there was a home on our street that was for sale, and it got sold pretty quickly, just like in any real estate boom. And he was so excited for the sale of our other neighbor, and John comes up to me, goes, "Garrett, this is amazing. That house sold so fast." And let me tell you, John was just so excited. He was excited for, the sale of this house because it was a longtime neighbor of his, and he was happy for that neighbor to be moving on and moving on to their dream cottage home and so forth. And the value that they got. Now, this is, I got to tell you, this is what really excited John. And John was going on, and he's like, "I can't believe someone would spend $1,250,000 on our street at this current time." And again, this is about 4 or 5 years ago. So that value was pretty high for our area where I happen to live. And I looked at John, I said, $1,250,000. John, I'm sorry, where'd you get that information from? Because John knows I'm a realtor. That's probably, that's why he's sharing some of this information with me. And of course, I'm a realtor. And of course, I know the valuation of that home, and I know the price, and I know what it sold for. So you kind of see where I'm getting at here, right? And John says, "Well, Garrett, the other neighbor told me it sold for $1,250,000. And I said, "Well, John, actually, when I looked it up last night of what that home sold for, it sold for $1,025,000. So almost in like a nanosecond, John's, value of his own house, I should say, the value of his own house dropped $250,000 because without John knowing it, he had the wrong information. And it's so important to have the correct information, especially when it comes to the valuation of your home, because perhaps, John was already creating ideas for this extra equity that he had in his home. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe he was looking at buying another investment property with it or something. But when you're told when you're told information, you believe it to be true, especially if it comes from someone that you deem to be a reliable source. But when you kind of peel the onion away, you got to make sure that you're getting the right information, because one of the things that we do as realtors and sellers and buyers, we do this all the time, is if I have a client that calls me up and says, "Garrett, I'm thinking about selling my home, or I need to put a valuation on my home," or so forth. One of the very first questions I ask In fact, all great realtors ask this. Well, what do you think your home's valued at today? And if I had asked that question to John without him not knowing that he had the incorrect information, he would have said about $1.2 million, $1.3 million, somewhere around there. And then I immediately would know that perhaps, hey, I have some education to do or educating to do when I get to see John, right? Because unknowingly, he had the wrong information. And that happens all the time. It does. It happens all the time. Maybe that home you thought sold in multiple offers. Yeah, it was 2 offers, but or perhaps you thought it had like 10 offers, but it was really only 2. And we see this happening all the time right now in our real estate market too. Sold over ask. I'm recording this, filming this Friday, August 26th, and we're seeing signs all over the place right now. Again, sold over ask. But what that agent's kind of doing is, well, that home was previously listed at, say, $1 million, and they just sold it for $900,000, but they relisted it for $850,000. So I guess on the relist, it sold at $900,000. It sold for over asking. There's that cough button looking for it. However, it didn't sell over the original list price, right? So the misinformation, there's lots of misinformation out there, especially that's going on right now, especially through platforms like Twitter and everywhere else. So I urge you to kind of peel the onion away, ask questions and so forth. And one of the things that we do when we come to value homes, especially I do, and I teach this to all those, the 250 agents, the many other agents that I lead as well, is when we go and value a home, when we're doing a CMA, a comparative market analysis is the right word for that. I coach our agents to do a double 5. And what that simply means is, hey, we're going to look at 5 homes that are currently on the market that are very similar to yours and are really your competition, right? Because when we come to market, we want to know what our competition is. And we also look at 5 homes that have currently sold that are as close to yours as possible, close in location and close in style and in finishes. That's what we want to know. Because when we look at those homes, we'll look at the competition, and then more importantly, we'll look to see how those homes sold and the value of those homes. And we want as close as today's date as possible. Why? Well, because back, 6 months ago, especially in the GTA area, that was, April, what am I saying? 6 months ago was February, March, and those prices are much different than they are today, right? It'll be the same for your market. And it doesn't matter if you're listening to this podcast in 3 years from now. It's the same. It's the same strategy. We want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges and so forth. You know all that. So we use the double 5. And one of the best questions that I, as a realtor, will ask after viewing the properties that are currently on the market, the properties that have currently sold, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what do you feel that your home is valued at today? And sure enough, usually our valuations are pretty close to each other. Sometimes they're a little bit, sometimes they're a little bit off, and maybe that's me educating myself more, or maybe that's the seller understanding that the valuation maybe is better than they thought, or perhaps it's not quite there. And that's okay. It's all about asking more questions, right? And having the right information in front of you. So anyways, just a quick, less than 10-minute podcast video talking about, some of the things that we're going to share. I'm going to share lots of crazy tenant stories, lots of ways that we purchased properties in the past, the ways that we've walked away from properties, why you would walk away from a property, why as a realtor would I walk away from a commission, all things like that. Well, it's really about the best opportunity coming forward and allowing and creating a space to make great decisions and great opportunities for clients and so forth. And personally, I've walked away from properties before as well. And as an investor, I've owned many properties. If you could renovate it, I've renovated it. If you could tear it down, I've torn it down and rebuilt it. If a tenant has shared a story with me, I have heard them all. And I'm here to share all of those fun stories. And really this is a learning podcast, and one that I can just share and have fun with, and answer many questions that people will send me and so forth in a podcast format. So Without any crazy fanfare or anything like that, I will be signing off. And thank you for listening and watching. I'm happy to be doing this podcast, and we'll see everybody on the next show. Bye for now.